Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative Podcast, the podcast where we have digital discussions on the worlds of TV, film, social media, sports, everything really. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis. On Twitter, you know me as PD Beats. My guest, I'm really excited about this. This is really cool. You will recognize him as Zordon from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. We are with David J. Fielding. David, welcome to Popternative.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm not as big and blue as I used to be, but, I think it works. So.
But, yeah, well, Zordon is on Popternative, and we are happy to have you. We've seen a lot of interviews, and you've done a lot of conventions, and you talk about it here and there, but, when did that, you auditioned for it was an opportunity for a gig, but, when did that all kind of start fizzling into, the opportunity that you were going to be on this show called Power Rangers?
So let me understand the question. You're asking me when did I get involved with the convention scene, or how did I get involved with Power Rangers?
With the show, because I saw interviews that you've done in the conventions talking about how you got into it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I had gone to my undergrad college at the time was called Southwest Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. It's just called Texas State now. And I went down there to study acting. And while I was there, I made a lot of great friends and learned a lot about the craft. And when I graduated from there, I had gotten into the MFA program at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. So while I went up there, a bunch of my friends from Southwest had moved out to California. And then once the master's program had finished 3 years later, I moved out to California and joined them. So I had a network of friends out in Los Angeles when I first got there. And one of my friends from Southwest Texas State, Stacy Fish, was actually working at Saban at the time, working in production on part of their direct-to-video movies that they were doing. And she called me up one day, and I'd only been in town for a couple of months. And she said, we're filming this kids' television pilot, and they're looking for a role. Would you like to come down and audition? And I thought, well, sure, that's what I'm here for. And I expected it to be a cattle call. You go down there, there's 15,000 guys, you read the lines, you go home, and you never hear anything. But when I got down to the Saban building, it was just me and another guy. And they told us they were going to cast it that night and shoot it next week. Would we be available and all that sort of thing. And luckily enough, between the two of us, I had the right quality, the right look, the vocal tone that they were looking for. So I won the part. And the following week, I went to a warehouse in, I think it might have been Studio City or Culver City. I'm not exactly, can't remember exactly where, but they shaved all my hair off and darkened my eyebrows, glued my ears back, and they filmed me in front of a green screen for about 5 or 6 hours.
And that was the creation of Zordon.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
No, that's really awesome. I said it before, I'm a 91, right? So Power Rangers, that was my thing, David.
Yeah. It was all over you. It was just in your face the whole time. So, yeah, you really couldn't get away from it.
It was. The one thing, we're going to talk about specifically, Zordon, but the one thing that you probably got asked this a lot, but so when you think of Power Rangers, there's the show. What aspect of Power Rangers do people talk about all the time? Try to see if you can guess what I'm thinking of.
Oh, they always talk about, the transformation from the kids to the actual Rangers when they get the suits on, and then they're doing all the flying kicks, and all the putties are flying everywhere, and then
the theme song.
The music. Ron Wasserman's guitar is just amazing. So yeah, the Go Power Rangers is just that earworm that just gets right in there.
But it's pretty funny because my dad that grew up on classic rock, and metal became really big in like the 80s and 90s, and I'm this 7-8-year-old watching the Power Rangers, listening to this song, and there's this heavy like metal riff, you know what I mean? Like for a kids show, it had a pretty metal theme song.
Yeah. I think it really kind of stood out from other kids shows or cartoons at the time. It just there were so many elements that came together, and it really was lightning in a bottle, and it just took off. So yeah.
What was your favorite part about playing Zordon?
My favorite part about playing Zordon was always whenever I would go into the booth and I would be told, this is the monster they're fighting this week, and just trying to wrap my head around the weirdness of everything that was going on. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and so I was very familiar with Ultraman and Spectre-Man and the kaiju stuff. So the weird, bizarre inventiveness of the Japanese Sentai being brought over to the States, it was great. So my favorite part about playing Zordon was seeing week to week the craziness that these guys would have to deal with, and then of course try to explain it to them with a straight face that they needed to stand up and defeat this thing before the juice bar got trashed one more time.
And I think that's the one thing that I loved about Power Rangers. That was kind of really cool to think about how many episodes and how many seasons they've done, and how there's like a different monster that they fight like almost every episode. You know what I mean? And you kind of had that kind of dialogue and banter between friends about like, did you see what happened on Power Rangers last night? And you look at social media now, David, and that is like, can you imagine if social media was around what Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, like what kind of world would that be?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that at conventions before about, if we had social media at the time, it would have been twice as big, I think. We just would have reached more people even faster, I guess. But at the time, it is what it was. So.
But like as a 90s kid watching Power Rangers, like if you asked me as a kid, my 7-year-old self, like, why do you like the Power Rangers? I would tell you because it's cool. Why do you think, like what kind of elements from your perspective made it cool at the time, David?
Well, for me, it was the message of the show was, you and your friends can do this. Everybody has their own individuality, and everybody has their little quirks and their little personality and stuff. But when you all come together, there's nothing that can stop you. And so I think that spoke to a lot of people, a lot of kids, especially in school, who might have had like a core group of friends, 4 or 5 guys that would hang out every day, or be at recess together. And it was very easy for them to go, okay, well, you play Billy today, and you play Jason, and you play Kimberly. And so I think that magic of them being able to like step into the shoes of the Rangers themselves really just added to the experience of them believing that they too could be a Power Ranger.
Absolutely. We mentioned the conventions, and you've done a good amount of them, and you're going into them, and you're meeting the fans, and they're saying, "Oh my God, it's Zordon!" And I mean, I don't think, and that's the thing I ask, because I've had a lot of guests on my show that were in, when they were child actors, they were in like the Mighty Ducks and the Sandlot, right? And people say, they did that, 15, 20 years ago, right? And people still bring it up. And I said, do you ever get tired of that? And they say, no, like it was a big part of my life. Do I want to kind of beat a stick with it and kind of bring it up all the time when I'm doing present stuff? Is that are you in the same boat with that? I mean, you've done it a long time ago, but I'm sure you don't get tired talking about it.
I don't really. When I left the show shortly after it went on the air, they continued to use my face throughout the life of the character, but Robert Manahan took over as the vocal part of Zordon after I left. And so I sort of forgot about it for a while. I moved on with my life and did voiceovers for video games and worked in video games for a long time. And it wasn't until like Facebook came along and I started to connect with old friends and stuff like that I would start to get messages from people, strangers, asking me if I was the David Fielding that played Zordon. And before that, it was just a really cool anecdote that I could tell to somebody at a party or at a dinner or something like that and say, oh, yeah, I was on a kids' television show in the early 90s. And whenever I would do that, people would be like, oh, my God, I remember that show. But it wasn't until around 2011 that I started to get like a lot of requests for appearances and stuff like that, and really started to understand how this thing was still going on, and that it meant a lot to other people. So I did my research and had to rewatch the episodes. And the first time that I went to a convention and sat up on stage to do a Q&A, and to hear the stories about how the show was really important to people, how it got them through some tough times, how if they came from a broken home, it was like their sort of refuge that they could identify with. So I do feel a certain level of responsibility to protect that because it's important that people enjoy what their nostalgia is, however they think about that. So I try to be very respectful and protective of that, and it's paid me dividends in the long run. Not necessarily financial dividends, but more in the terms of giving back to people and enjoying the fact that I'm a part of people's lives, the world around. I mean, we were in 40 countries and 40 different languages, and so it's really sort of a worldwide phenomenon, and I'm very proud and humbled to be a part of that.
So, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a kids show. There were some adults like yourself on that kids show, but being a kids show, it also featured kids. The people who were the Rangers were kids. They were child actors. They were people that kind of didn't have the normal life that that I did, where they had to go to school, but then go to set, and then go back to school and go to set. As like, I don't know how much interaction you had, but did you kind of see that struggle from these child actors in terms of kind of going back and forth and having to kind of live these double lives of being kind of a kid and an actor? Because I talked to a lot of them, it's a struggle.
Yeah. Well, the Rangers were not really kids. They were, I think Austin was the youngest. He was 17, 18. The others were
teenagers.
Older. Yeah. I mean, they were in their early 20s. So they were just becoming adults. So they didn't have the same sort of stuff like the girls on Full House might have had to do, where they had like a tutor on set or something like that. Because these guys put in some really long hours filming these episodes, because their schedule was really insane. Yeah. They were filming 4 episodes every 2 weeks or something like that, or 4 episodes every week. So they had 16-hour days of learning fights, setting up shots, and one day would be done in the command center. Another day would be all out in the park, and they would just do these things like clockwork, as fast and as quickly as possible. So they had their own struggles. They were they didn't have very much of a social life, from what I understand. That they just lived and breathed Power Rangers 6 days a week for a year and a half before the show actually hit the air. So,
wow. No, I mean, talking to Matt Doherty, who played Averman in Mighty Ducks, like he said, there was a point where he was just like, I need to leave like Hollywood for a little bit. Like I need a little break.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was only in Hollywood for about a year and a half, and I realized fairly quickly that it does ask of you to give up a lot of yourself in order to achieve a certain level of success. And I found out early on that there were some parts of me that I didn't want to let go of, that I didn't want to change. And so I made the decision to leave. Had I stayed there another 6 months, who knows what would have happened? But I enjoyed my time there. It wasn't any sort of acrimonious split between myself and the show. It was just a decision that I made to leave because I was mentally and emotionally just done with the grind of what Hollywood and trying to be a working actor there takes.
No, absolutely. Well, David, I think we'll wrap up, but thank you so much for coming on Popternative. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be on. Thanks.
Zordon. Zordon is on my show. No, It's like, you know what? And you know what? I have to tell you, like, just on kind of a more serious note, I mean, I was, like many kids, you dealt with a lot of stuff being in school. You know what I mean? Bullying and everything. You'd come home to watch Power Rangers, and then all that stuff, all that baggage was gone. You know what I mean? So, like, I just want to say to you and the other cast and crew, I mean, thank you.
My pleasure. I mean, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about the notoriety of being attached to the project, is that it had such a positive effect for everybody. And that's something that I'm really proud about. So, yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up to date with David J. Fielding?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at David J. Fielding. They can find me on Instagram at DJFielding_Zordon. And if you're on Facebook, you can just do a search for Zordon, and my Zordon page should pop up.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. And until next time, this is Petey Beats and Zordon signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.